Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're making sense of the news. Coming up at 5:30, Christian Hines is with us, a political analyst, election modeler. He'll give us a closer look at the Commonwealth of Virginia in particular, and also a little bit about Pennsylvania. They call it the Keystone State. It may very well be the keystone for the entire election. We'll discuss. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I'll be taking calls this hour. Todd Bensman is a senior national security fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies, and he's the author of the book Overrun, How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History, and he joins us on the phone now. Todd, good to have you back with us, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Todd, for listeners who regularly tune in, will be familiar that you joined us last week. We discussed how you were seeing massive humanity moving north from the south of Mexico, Tapachula, headed towards what looked like the United States border. As the week progressed, I know you learned more and more about what was happening. Give us an update on what is going on in Mexico.
Sure. But first, you have to just know that the Biden-Harris administration cut a deal with Mexico back in December to shut down the spectacle of mass migration at our border by blocking the immigrants in their southern provinces, Chiapas State and Tabasco State. So they put up military, put 35,000 soldiers out there, rounded them up, and brought them all down to Tapachula, Mexico, and in Chiapas and elsewhere down there, and had blocked them in with militarized roadblocks to keep them off our border. It looks bad for the election. So that's why I went down there to take a look at what's going on. And what I found is just this massive buildup, of course, of immigrants from all over the world that are unable to advance past these roadblocks, and it's basically like caged cities down there. The city of Tapachula, which is right on the Mexican border, is maybe the worst hit. The publisher of the Tapachula newspaper told me in an interview that they're pretty sure 150,000 immigrants are all jammed in there, sardine can-like. And it's causing a major problem. The place is denuded of resources. People are sleeping in the streets. I saw that myself. The shelters are all full, and they're trying to get them moved out of that city into other cities to spread the joy, I guess, or to spread the population out more evenly. Yeah, the burden into. So the caravans. There's another caravan that started out today. To my understanding, my newer understanding is that they are not headed to the U.S. border because the cordon is still in effect. The blockade is still in effect. But what they're doing is that they're Mexican military escorted caravans to other cities within Chiapas, within those states, to just move them out of that one denuded city and get them into other places to spread them out a little bit more. And so they're escorted by the military as 500 to 1,500 a day new ones pour in from Guatemala. So it just kind of is an escape hatch. And so there's a new caravan out today. I think there's yesterday about 2,000 of them. They do not appear to be going to the U.S. They'll go to somewhere else down there, but probably not much past Mexico City, is my understanding.
Okay. I'm so glad you're back to talk about this because as you reached a logical conclusion early last week that it looked like people were headed for our border because that has been the pattern. Everyone comes to our border and crosses. And instead what you're discovering is that they're trying to maintain this burden for at least the duration of the election, but they're spreading it around Mexico. Mexicans can't be thrilled with this, that the world's foreign nationals are all pouring in and staying in their country.
No, this is it's a blight for them. It's an eyesore. It's a local political problem for these communities down there. I mean, there are just, tens of thousands of immigrants that are unable to move out of the area. And a lot of them can't support themselves very well. There's not much work. There's not much space for anybody. The Mexicans have devised various schemes to bus them out of Tapachula into other cities. And that's kind of been slow going. So I think that they welcome these caravans. That would explain why they are escorting them and protecting them from one Chiapas town to another Chiapas town to kind of just move them around. I mean, it's a hellscape down there.
And that's not the desire of these foreign nationals, is it? Their desire is to make it to the United States.
Right. And, hope springs eternal down there in the blockaded cities, which is that, soon the American election will happen and something will change. Once the election is over, a lot of them think that, maybe they'll be released and actually maybe they will be released finally. I don't know how long the Mexicans can hold them back like this. So, I mean, there could very well be more than 150,000. That's just the estimate in Tapachula, one city. There's another city called Villahermosa over in Tabasco State that's supposedly just as bad. I mean, there might be 300,000 just between those two cities, not to mention all these other towns all over both of those states. There could be hundreds of thousands trapped down there beyond just what I saw in Tapachula. And I've been to Tapachula 5 times, 6 times over the recent years, and I've never, ever seen anything like this. I mean, it is just shoulder to shoulder, packed to the gills. Every street filled with them. The downtown plaza, the shelters are completely overwhelmed. Every store has got migrants and people are begging and sleeping in the streets.
Yes.
It's like that down there. So I can imagine that go ahead.
Well, my question to you is, you mentioned that it was December of last year that the Biden administration struck some sort of deal with the Mexican government. Presumably it was to erect this dam and to block the images of the world pouring across our southern border for the duration of the election. Do you know at this date, almost a year ago now, what the United States offered in order to achieve this?
Nobody knows the answer to that. I have asked in email. I know other reporters, other people have asked for an explanation, for some kind of an answer. I know 60 Minutes interviewed the president of Mexico a few months ago, the one who just left office, Lopez Obrador, and he asked on 60 Minutes for $20 billion. He said he expects $20 billion. The interviewer for 60 Minutes responded, well, that sounds like blackmail. And he said, well, let the immigration continue if I don't get the $20 billion. I speak what's on my mind. So I don't know if he got the $20 billion. Nobody's talking about it. Something changed hands.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was a threat or money or something else.
Yes. So the United States acts, or at least the Biden administration does, like it's impossible to stop this massive humanity moving into our country, that they're so overwhelmed that they can't fit in detention centers, that they just need to be released into the interior. How is it that Mexico is stopping all of these people from moving within their own country?
Well, they're using the military. They put 35,000 troops out there, and you can see them everywhere. This town is absolutely full of regular Army and National Guard, and I mean like full battle rattle everywhere down there. And they're trying to keep order is the main thing, because these immigrant populations get very restive. They've been known to riot and to burn tires and shut streets down and that sort of thing. And I think that they're worried about that sort of thing happening. But the way they get them in is they've been rounding them up from our border, all along our border, from Tijuana to Matamoros, and putting them on planes and buses and flying and driving them down there and depositing them. Anybody without the right papers, which of course are never forthcoming, gets rounded up. If they can find them, they get rounded up and shipped south of Mexico City. And then the roads are blockaded. So if you try to get through without the papers that they want you to have, they're going to put you back in a bus or a plane and put you back down there in Tapachula, which is absolutely a hated place right now. So that's essentially how they did it. I believe that the why of it is to, prevent the political spectacle during the campaign of mass numbers of people pouring over the border.
Yeah.
The big question in my mind is, and it should be in everybody's mind, is what happens on November 6th when the American election is decided. Did Mexico meet its obligation then and is free and clear to release these hundreds of thousands of people toward the border? What's going to happen? I mean, if it's Trump, I think probably they're going to be, go for it, And as a matter of fact, I interviewed a lot of immigrants over the last week, and most of the ones that I interviewed are extremely aware of our political campaign, acutely aware, and tell me that if that they're very afraid that Trump would win, and that if he wins, I mean, they would like to be over the border already because they're pretty sure he's going to close it. But if Harris wins, the Mexicans might feel, I'm done holding them back. I met my obligation as Mexico, and I'm going to cut them all loose because they're a big problem.
How surprised will you be if on November 6th, a wave of humanity starts moving into the United States?
Not at all. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me at all because this is painful for the Mexicans to do this operation. There are a lot of social problems going on as a result. It's got to be very expensive. It's got to be a big headache. I interviewed the publisher of the local Tapachula newspaper, who said that the vast majority of people who live down there absolutely hate this. So it's definitely politically unpopular, according to the publisher, who's got his finger on the pulse down there. And eventually, that's going to catch up politically even to the Mexicans, local and state especially.
Yeah, but as you pointed out when we spoke last week, Mexico's got a new president. So if there's ever a time to do the politically unpopular thing, it's at the start of your term. That way, by the time you get to another election, it's over and done with.
That's a good point. She's not really talking too much about this, Mexico's new president, but most analysts believe that she, being a protege of AMLO, Lopez Obrador, her predecessor, that, she's just going to follow almost exactly in his policy steps. She is a immigration kind of anti-borders type of a politician. And so, we can expect that she's going to be very in favor of transit, free transit, as free as they can get it. Now, if Trump wins, he's probably going to put the heat on her to keep this thing going, because, this is what Trump did already with AMLO when he was in office, except under threat. Trump said 28% trade tariffs if you don't hold them back, and AMLO did. We'll put a trade tariff on every, car, auto part that comes over the border, and that was all it took. Biden, eliminated that threat as a threat, and so they poured right through, and I think they rolled right through. Yeah, they rolled them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it'd be very interesting to watch. I think most Americans have no idea that this is happening down there.
Yes.
I don't think official Washington has any idea that this has happened down there, that there's this wall of humanity down there waiting to burst forward.
Right. And Mexico has basically its own Kamala Harris in charge right now, who's perfectly happy with all of this craziness and is doing her best to help Kamala get elected.
Yeah, of course. And, of course, the other thing that's interesting to note is that, the Harris campaign never speaks of this. I think that it would invite questions about, well, what did you give Mexico to do this for you? That is a question I think nobody wants to answer. And if they took credit for arranging this diplomatic grand bargain with Mexico, they would have to answer that question. What would you give them?
Yeah.
In during the campaign. So and the other thing is that she's constantly saying, "Well, I need this Senate bill. I'll sign the Senate bill. This is what I need to control the border." But no, you didn't. All you had to do was cut a deal with Mexico to cut most of it down.
That's right. Yeah, Trump did it.
That's it.
And we could do it again. All right. Hey, thank you. Todd Bensman, thank you as always for your excellent reporting on an issue that too few people really know the contours of, but you do, and I'm so grateful for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Todd Bensman, Center for Immigration Studies. All right, let's take a phone call. I've got Chris calling in from Marshall now, line 5. Hello, Chris. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
As always, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate that. The best events are the ones you can judge them by how good the memes are that come out of each event. And this has just been epic. The left is absolutely losing their mind over this. One of my favorite memes so far about this is a picture of Donald Trump from the back, and he's holding a paint roller looking up at a McDonald's sign, and he's painted out the MC, and it's just Donald. I mean, he's owned this. I worry, though, that this is going to be kind of like Ayn Rand 2025. Next thing you know, we're going to hear that Elon is flinging dough at Papa John's or something, and they're all going to be checking out like John Galt, all the men of industry and everything.
Uh-huh.
It's just that the left, they're losing their minds over this, and the simplicity of his act and the sincerity of it is what really I think drives them crazy. But he's owning it. He's really owning it.
Yeah.
And I hope we see you this weekend.
Say again?
I hope we see you this weekend.
Yeah, okay. Chris, we'll talk offline. Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
We'll talk later.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the call. No, Chris with a bunch of good points and then a mysterious reference to a weekend visit. When's that going to be? All right, hang with us. More of your phone calls in a moment. The state of this campaign, what's happening? Why is the left freaking out so much right now? I thought they were in the driver's seat. And Christian Hines is going to join us soon. We'll take a closer look at Virginia. All ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. 4:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up in the next hour, Christian Hines is here, political analyst, election modeler. We're going to talk to him about specifically Virginia, but also Pennsylvania, such a critical state. We'll get a sense of how things are going this election. Just 15 days remaining, if you can even believe it. You can join us to discuss it all at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. Sometimes I wonder if Donald Trump is actually Kamala Harris's campaign manager. Do you ever get that sense? You're like, how could she have such a disastrous campaign with each twist and turn only working to Donald Trump's benefit? The only way it makes sense is if Trump himself is her campaign manager, right? Yeah, go sit down with Brett Baer on the Fox News channel. That'll go well. Yeah, maybe you should be on Joe Rogan's podcast. I've noticed that they haven't talked about that a lot lately, ever since the Brett Baer interview. If she can't do a half-hour interview, she definitely can't do a 3-hour interview, not with Joe Rogan. And you see now in the final stretch of the campaign, Liz Cheney is campaigning with Kamala Harris. Liz Cheney. What? What is this campaign? What in the world am I even staring at? Yeah, you know what we need more of? War and scurrilous allegations about January 6th and Donald Trump. How is it that the Cheney family became the top surrogates for the Democrat candidate for president of the United States? And everyone's supposed to act like this is totally normal. This is great. So Liz Cheney is going to spend the waning days of the campaign with Kamala. You know who's not going to spend the waning days of the campaign with Kamala? Joe Biden. Joe Biden. NBC reports this weekend from sources up and down that Biden will not appear with Kamala Harris before Election Day. No more. The sitting president of the United States, the one who stepped down to allow Kamala to take the reins, is not going to be campaigning at all with Kamala Harris. At least that's what NBC reports. Harris has no current plans to campaign with Biden before Election Day. With just 2 weeks left in the 2024 campaign, there are currently no plans for Vice President Harris to appear on the trail with President Joe Biden before Election Day, according to 3 Harris campaign officials and 3 White House officials. So both sides agree, yep, we've got no plans for them to campaign together at all. Instead, Biden plans to try to help Harris this week by privately leveraging some of his longtime political relationships, specifically with labor leaders who, it's so funny he says that because, like, what are the unions doing? Well, a lot of them aren't even endorsing at all. They're saying, we're going to sit this one out. All of our guys like Trump, and we're not courageous enough, the union leadership, we're not courageous enough to say that we're going to endorse Trump, so we'll just sit back and say, well, we're not endorsing. That's what the Teamsters are doing. And, you got all these, like, UAW members. They all support Trump. Almost all of them. And the union leadership is all trying to sit this one out. Or we'll stay off to the side. And Biden's gonna smooth things over. Oh, lunch bucket Joe. He's gonna smooth things over with everybody. Get the unions all backing Kamala. Sure he is. His schedule in the final week before the election has not yet been determined, they said. The strategy was crafted with coordination between Harris and Biden aides who believe at this time, quote, the most important role that he can play is doing his job as president, said one of the White House officials who, like others in this piece, was granted anonymity to speak candidly. He's out there doing the job as president, and she's out there campaigning, the official said, adding, it's clear voters want something new. Voters want something new. Now, that is Democrat speak for Joe Biden is an anchor around the neck of this campaign. And the last thing we want people to think of when they're looking at Kamala Harris is Joe Biden. Because he's a disaster, and there's a reason that they threw the hook around him and dragged him off stage. Get out of here, brother. Let's replace you. One Harris campaign official described Biden's role for the remainder of the campaign as, quote, tailored. What are these stupid euphemisms? Do they think that people can't see through this? Well, we have a very dynamic, tailored, narrow, specific, very focused role for Joe Biden. And it's don't let him out of the closet. Don't let him out of the basement. Hide him from the American people. We don't want people thinking about him. NBC says it's a remarkably diminished position in the 2024 campaign for a president who until just a few months ago, was at the top of the Democratic ticket. It comes as Harris is trying to convince voters in the final days before the election she does not represent a second Biden term and instead is a candidate of change. Really? How is that? How is she a candidate of change? I would love if she would describe that. What makes her the change candidate? Kamala was campaigning with Liz Cheney today, as I pointed out. She was asked about turning the page. What's on the next page, Kamala?
You talk a lot about a new way forward. You talk about turning the page. What's on the next page? Talk to us about...
Yeah. You want a preview?
This is Liz Cheney asking the question. Right? Is it? No, it's not? It's someone else there at the event? Okay, Liz Cheney's is there with her. They're campaigning together. I don't know the name of the hostess. But she's asking Kamala Harris about turning the page. What's on the next page? Great question. She has yet to answer it.
Yeah, give me a spoiler alert, Just tell us what's the rest of the chapter.
Well, first of all, I will say that it is a metaphor that is meant to also describe my intention to embark on a new generation of leadership.
Oh, that's clear as mud. She's going to embark on a new generation of leadership. What does that even mean?
And needless to say, mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration.
Needless to say. Usually, needless to say is a preface when you don't have to say it. But you do need to say it. You do. What do you mean? Of course. She thinks she's so clever, too. This whole line, the one that they finally unleashed on Brett Baer's interview last week, my presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's. This is like a politician who everybody knows is going to run for president, Like, are you running for president? I am not running for president right now. Right now. They think they're so clever. Well, it's technically true. It won't be a continuation of Joe Biden. We're not asking whether or not you're a different human being. That's not the question. If it turns out you're the same human being, that is a fascinating story. That'd be a real screaming headline. We're just asking, are you going to continue his policies? Because guess what? You've been a part of his administration, and you've been one of the most important forces in getting all of that legislation that wrecked this country passed. So, yeah, it seems kind of a critical question as you campaign for president, whether or not you're going to stay the course for disaster. I'm not going to be a continuation of the Biden presidency. Right. And she was asked even, and not just her, Tim Walz was on The View today, in his campaign to win over men.
Can you point to a policy decision over the last 4 years that you and the vice president would have handled differently from President Biden?
Well, I think this expansion on Medicare is something that I wished would have been proposed sooner. But look, they're tackling the issues that they needed to. They came out of a pandemic that Donald Trump had left a mess for, an economy with supply chains that were broken.
So some sort of like small little thing like, oh, if only we had spent more money on Medicare. Is that really what he's saying? That's the biggest difference, really. We didn't spend enough money. Thanks, Tim Walz. There he is. Let's see. Oh, Kamala Harris also continuing with Liz Cheney today. She said 150 world leaders that when did she have time to talk to 150 world leaders? She says they're all saying they're very concerned that Donald Trump is going to win this election. Of course, the people we care the most about are other world leaders, not the American voters.
So I've now, as vice president, met over 150 world leaders. Presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings, many of them multiple times, to the point we're on a first-name basis. And the last few times I've seen them in the relative eve of this election, they are very concerned, our allies. Because, as you know, when we walk in those rooms around the world representing the United States of America, we have traditionally been able to walk in those rooms, chin up, shoulders back.
You ever seen Trump walk into a room with other world leaders? Yeah, he pushes his way in. Out of my way, bum. America's here. It's amazing. He got NATO countries to actually start paying up. Remember that? He said, if you don't pay up, there's no reason for this pact. What kind of arrangement is this? We pay for everything, you pay for nothing? We're not doing that anymore. Deadbeats, pay up. Pay up. We're supposed to be protecting each other, and the United States is bearing the whole burden. So guess what they did? They started paying a lot more money. So Trump would walk in with his head up and his shoulders back. Kamala Harris, like, what?
With the self-appointed and earned authority to talk about the importance of democracies and rule of law. But as all the role models here know, as a role model, people watch what you do to see if it lines up with what you say.
God.
People around the world.
Do role models normally lie about working at McDonald's? Is that a normal feature of role models?
The world are watching this. And I tell you, sometimes I do fret a bit about whether we as Americans truly understand how important we are to the world.
Oh, so that was kind of a deplorable moment, wasn't it? Americans don't really understand the game they're playing right now. If you support Donald Trump, you don't appreciate what it means to be an American. You're a bad person. Think of the message you're going to send the world if you give Donald Trump the presidency again. That's Kamala Harris today. Very judgy about your vote. Very judgy about your vote. Also, she's mad that you think Donald Trump is funny. This is great.
In many, many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of him being president of the United States are brutally serious. There are things that he says that will be the subject of skits and laughter and jokes.
She says, isn't this a great presidential campaign where she just sits on stage and like wags her finger at you and scolds you? Don't you dare think Trump is funny. Don't you laugh at his jokes. Don't you find his personality endearing. How dare you? And in fact, if we elect Trump, think of what the world leaders will say. They're like, really? That's your pitch? I've already voted for the guy. Or maybe you haven't yet. You should, by the way, if you can. I've already voted for him. You don't need to convince me. Oh, she's grumpy. Boy, is she grumpy. All right, to the phones we go. Let's take Dave in Falls Church now, line 2. Hello, Dave. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Thank you, Vince. We met 2 years ago at Bourbon Boulevard with my Hillsdale College grad daughter, and then over at the nightclub in Alexandria. It was wonderful. You and Chris and the great one and Larry. But appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dave.
I just want to mention I was recalled back to the State Department 30 years ago when the U.S. was starting its assistance program for the former Soviet Union, and one of the girls in our office was Liz Cheney, who had just finished college, was in the USAID and was brought over to our office. She was a strong conservative then and has gone round the bend for some reason or other. I helped her actually get accepted to law school at the University of Chicago and never saw her very much after that. But I'm just surprised at the transformation that she's had because she's turned into almost as much of an airhead as Kamala.
Yeah, what do you make of it? Why do you think she did that?
Trump arrangement syndrome, Bush syndrome, and then Trump syndrome. Who knows? Her family has interesting assortment of her sister and then her dad, of course, and for whatever reason was never really capable of seeing what it meant to honor conservatism.
Yeah, it's sad. It's very sad. Wow. So you knew her 30 years ago, and you say
30 years ago,
that she's gone wild with Trump. Well, it's definitely obvious she's got Trump derangement syndrome. She's gone like I don't know what kind of conservative sits on stage with Kamala Harris and says, "Boy, she'd be a great president of the United States."
Yeah, and now she as you and I know, she's falsified how much information on the January 6th committee. She's absolutely falsified.
Yeah. There was nothing honest about that exercise at all. It was just a series of lies and deceptions, and that really
wanting to go and sit on the same panel with all those weird Marxists.
Yeah, that was really sad. Dave, thank you. I appreciate your call and that perspective. And it was all that time ago. I remember meeting you. Thank you very much, and your daughter. I really appreciate your call today, sir.
You're very welcome, Vince. Thank you. God bless you.
That's Dave in Falls Church. Roland is calling in from Texas on line 4. Hello, Roland. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
How you doing there, Vince?
Good.
Okay. I sit there and listen to the guy talking, and one of the things that I recognize is getting Liz Cheney to go out and campaign with you is like getting Margaret Hamilton in full witch costume to go with you to Munchkinland to campaign.
Yeah, no, that's right. It is amazing. I am convinced at this point that Donald Trump is somehow secretly managing Kamala Harris's campaign. She's campaigning with Liz Cheney in these final days of the election. This is the most critical time, and Liz Cheney is sharing the stage with her.
This stuff couldn't be written into a movie because nobody would take you and believe your script.
I know, Roland. You're right about that. Also, Hollywood's got no courage. They should make this into a movie. It'd be fantastic. It's 4:51 now. WMAL, traffic and weather. I mean, forget a movie. You know those like HBO television series? Every element of Trump's presidential career would have a cliffhanger. You've got amazing season finales. You've got shootings. You've got Nancy Pelosi. You've got Russia collusion. I mean, this would make an amazing television series. No courage whatsoever in Hollywood. All right, our buddy Phil is calling in from Fredericksburg, line 7. Hello, Phil. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Look, I just want to say about this thing with Donald Trump, President Trump at McDonald's. I mean, it was such a brilliant move, but the most beautiful part of it was the interplay between President Trump and the American people. It was honest and decent and open, and he clearly showed that he cared about the working people, and he was there to enjoy himself, to get a break from the on-the-road madness, and he got that, and it was just beautiful. It's in stark contrast to Kamala Harris, who pokes her head out of a hole like a groundhog once a day, and the media has their gasm. And, I mean, he's just an honest, decent person who appreciates being American and understands what American capitalism is about, because McDonald's is the tip of the spear. You know, we have to take care of our businesses.
And he understands. He understands as a billionaire that being a part of what we refer to as the ruling class comes with some responsibility of both gratitude and decency and empathy to the people around him. He treats Americans like they're human beings. This is it's an old concept that it's very much defined Western civilization of noblesse oblige. The idea that somebody who has the privileges he does can look at somebody else in a different station in life and treat them well and have a sense that I am blessed. I have extraordinary privileges. Not everybody has them, and I need to have some empathy for my fellow man. That's President Trump. He doesn't fake it. He goes in the suit. He goes in the suit. He doesn't pretend he's living some different life. He's living the life he has. But he's kind. He's decent. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is saying, you're a bad American. Think of what the world leaders will say if Donald Trump is reelected. Those are two very different messages. You're right about that, Phil.